of them, whether they accept nominations or not. And they have all confirmed such that they accept nomination. And as you know, the rules allow for a vetting process in terms of whether the criteria, whether, as you know, to be elected onto the National Executive Committee, you need to have been a member in good standing, uninterruptedly so, for a period of 10 years. And of course, the vetting process also checks things like, whether you have a criminal record and so on. So those processes with regards to the top 6 nominations have been completed, and that is why we are ready to share the names with you. Some of you who are foresighted and far-sighted and have powers of clairvoyancy already have a sense and so on. But of course, we are giving you now the official names. For position of president, there has been 2 names nominated. The first name is that of President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the second one is that of Dr. Zwelini Mkhize. And I will not give you the tallies in terms of each and every province. Remember, the requirement is that you must at least be nominated by 1 province, and the leagues count as provinces for that purpose. So, for President Cyril Ramaphosa, the total tally of nominations are 2,037. 2,037. And for Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, the total tally is 916. 916. And as I said, these are the 2 names nominated for position of president. And whereas with regards to position of deputy president, we have 3 names that have been successfully nominated, audited, and consolidated. So for Comrade Paul Mashatile, the tally is 1,791. 1,791. And for the next name, which is Ronald Lamula, the total tally is 427. And for Comrade Oscar Mabuyani, the total tally is 397. 397. Those are the 3 nominees for position of deputy president. And then for position of national chairperson, we have Stanley Matabata, and his tally is 1,492. 1,492. And for Mantashe Gwede, the total tally is 979. 979. And for David Masondo, the total tally is 501. 501. Those are the three names nominated for position of national chairperson. And for position of Secretary General, we have the following names. Mdumseni Ntuli, and the total tally is 1,225. 1,225. And for Pumulo Maswale, the total tally is 889. 889. And for Fikile Mbalula, the total tally is 749. 749. Then for the position of Deputy Secretary General, once again here we have only two names that have been successfully nominated. And the first there is Nomvula Mukonyanu. The total tally is 1,779. 1779. And for Phoebe Potgieter, the total tally is 905. 905. For the position of Treasurer General, we have three names nominated. The first is Benjamin Chauke, and the total tally is 552. And the second is Ule Mabe, and the total tally is 428. And the third is Mzwandile Masina, and the total tally is 348. These are the top six nominations. As I said, we take the first top three names nominated, and of course where the nominations were restricted to two, that's the names that remain. This process is not complete yet. As you know, at conference itself, there will be an opportunity for delegates to nominate from the floor, and of course any name that musters 25% of voting delegates will then also be included onto the ballot paper. And as I said, we will come back to you with regards to the 200 names from whom the additional 80 members would be elected at conference. So perhaps let me pause there, Chief and Pule. That's the essence of what we wanted to communicate. Thank you.
No, thanks, Pulua. Maybe, Chief, you want to just add a few before we open for the floor for questions? Chief? Are you covered? Okay, can I open for questions?
Yep.
Okay, we will take one round of questions because we had budgeted some time through which we are going to run this briefing. I take it that the hands that are up are the only hands we are going to have. So even if you're not sure, you can raise your hands. You will formulate the question as we move. Okay. No, that's fine. We can start so that you don't miss out on the... Okay, let's start the front row. You can introduce yourselves. Now I know your names, but Mkulua might not.
My name is Tanya Mayeka from the Business Day. So on the table right now, there is a proposal to add a second DSG among the top officials. What would be the electoral committee's role if, come conference, the conference decides that that resolution or that constitutional amendment should pass? How would the electoral committee vet that candidate? Would they be vetted from the floor? And how much support would that potential second DSG candidate require from the floor in order to be on the ballot?
President Motlanthe, Hajra Marshall from Business Day. Well done on keeping the most closely guarded secret in the ANC since 2007. The fact that it was so closely guarded, in previous conferences, because we've had factional politics, you've had two factions in the province, the lists have leaked because it's a contested terrain. This time, is it a sign that factions perhaps are weaker than they've been in previous build-up to ANC conferences? I think that would be a good thing, but I'd really like your perspective, especially since you've delivered organizational goals.
Okay. So what we'll do is that we'll take all the questions and then you can deal with them once they're done.
Thank you. Some kind of the SABC. Mr. Former Deputy President Mufande, on the issue pertaining to the nominations that have come through thus far, when you look at the tensions that we've seen in some provinces, particularly in the branch general meetings, and we have delivered the organizational report before, how would you characterize the state of the ANC in this conjunction, in the process that you've just undertaken? Then secondly, some leaders of the ANC are saying the proposals by your committee that you're going to break up the election of the top six into two different parts is unconstitutional in the constitution of the ANC, as you have to elect the entire top six at once and not break it up by electing the president, the DP, and the SG first and the other positions later. How are you going to navigate through those specific waters? And on the issues of campaigns and those who need to declare their donors for this conference, how many of the contenders in the top six have divulged their donors for this December electoral conference thus far? And from the nominations that you've just read out now, can you say clearly that Dr. Wasazana Zuma and Lili Sisulu have not met the threshold of branch nominations to appear on the ballot? Then lastly, I'd like to ask a question on behalf of also us as a former head of state, what would be the best way to tackle South Africa's electricity shortage, particularly after having spoken to the ESCOM CEO and the director who says we need a further 4 to 5 gigawatts of electricity to be added on the grid, which is the size of meter of Kusi. Thank you.
Let's move the opportunity and good afternoon to Kurua and Shima. My question is around the criteria that was used to arrive at these names that you just read out for us. Because if I recall very well, there was confusion about the so-called top 3. Or in fact, you said now when you started by being nominated by the lawyers, you maybe, but if I recall as well, who was it? Just repeat your name. Mawane Sanitarius. So not a problem. So I was saying, when you started here, you said the criteria is that of a province, which is the old criteria that we know. But I'm pleasantly surprised if that is the case, because if leagues count as provinces, we should be seeing names like Abu Mahmoud and Mahmoud who were nominated by particular leagues. So can you please just clarify the exact and precise process that was followed to arrive at this next thing?
No, that's fine. I will clarify. So we still okay. So as the mic is going there, but remember that Kuluwa did read out the numbers. So it means those other ones will count as one man. But it's fine, so we can't clarify it.
It's just on what I've heard from ANC, just on the financial disclosures. What bearing does it have on the nomination processes? Given that we do know in conference there are restriction fees, for example, 1% is supposed to pay some 1,800 rand. what role does the candidates have? Can they assist in those, or maybe clarify the financial disclosures and the role that they have leading up to the conference? And also just maybe on gender equity, I see the majority of the names. I just want the ANC stance on the gender equity and maybe why it's not reflected in the nomination.
It's Nayat Zonetolje from Power FM News. I understand that there is that constitutional amendment that may be first on the agenda come conference where there's a proposal to have a second DSG. What role does the electoral committee play in that regard? Thank you.
So it's almost a similar question for Tando asked.
Thank you. That's all I said at Sunday Times. Was also covered by my colleague, but I just wanted to add, perhaps just to clarify, if whether there was anyone who declined nomination and what were the reasons given. Secondly, did your committee exclude anyone from contesting for whatever reason? Can you clarify if there was any such and what were the reasons for striking the person's name? Thank you.
Okay. Kulua Chief Matsila, it looks like these are the, yes, the last hands.
Junior Kumano from News 24. Just a quick question from myself. The electoral committee indicated that it was also in the process of receiving the outstanding reports from the integrity committee before it makes a final conclusion on the candidates. Did you receive the final reports, and what was the rationale in allowing individuals such as the current president and Mr. Mkhize to continue to take part despite these clouds hanging over their heads?
Okay. Looks like those are the only questions we have. We are not going to be taking a second bite. I will invite the Chief Ansela to take the first bite, and then Kulua will come.
Thank you very much, Comrade Pule, our chair, Comrade Halma Mutlanta. The first question was from Business Day from Tando regarding the issue of the second DSG if the conference so decides. The role of the Electoral Committee is simple. We ensure that any nomination of a person in terms of that decision will be in accordance with the rules. And in this case, if that becomes an issue, anyone nominated from the floor should receive 25% of support amongst the delegates to conference, as our chair has already explained. Then Ajra from Business Day also, the issue of the information being closely guarded is also part of the rules of the Electoral Committee, which will ensure that we safeguard the integrity of a process, because when there are leaks around, the process loses credibility. But also credit to members of the African National Congress and the leaders who have been observing the rules and going into campaigning and nominations in terms of the rules. It's not even about factions being weak, but it's about factions being totally abolished by the rules. The rules don't allow any space for faction. That's why if you see the configuration as the numbers were mentioned, there's no list of people with the same number of nominations. Everybody is being nominated independently by the branches, and the consolidation paints a very clear picture in that regard. Samkelo, the issue of the character of the state of the ANC at the moment, I'll leave it to the chair of the committee to respond to you. The matter of the 3 voting sessions being deemed unconstitutional, it's a malicious interpretation of the ANC Constitution. The ANC Constitution, in terms of the rules actually indicates that the top 6 can be elected separately. And in the past, in the 1990s, each position was elected at its own time, one at a time, from 1 to 6. So if you read the Constitution properly, you don't find that kind of interpretation to be correct. And we want to then ask comrades to really interpret the Constitution properly. You did say the issue of the donors to the campaigns being declared. Yeah, we do see a growing trend of those that are now declaring, and most of them have indicated that once they accept nominations, then they will also declare. So it's an ongoing exercise, one that so far has got credibility and respect amongst those that are being nominated. So we believe we are on the track, on right. So you mentioned names of others that are not there. That process is the process of branches of the ANC. It's not the outcome that is engineered by the Electoral Committee. So we are not able to even predetermine as to who will be on the nominations. That's why we were saying comrades must desist from pronouncing on nominations before the process, because then the results can become very different from what we see. Mawande Sunday Times, the leaks counting as a province. The challenge here is that you have the leaks that are not in good standing, because at the moment they are led by national task teams, which are interim structures. So unlike provinces, their process did not involve branches in good standing. In that respect, their nomination amounted to a single nomination, which then in terms of the ANC Constitution, you couldn't give them that kind of status. Aviwe from ENCA, there's nobody who's allowed to pay for any expenses for the delegates whatsoever. Going to conference, you can't pay accommodation, you can't pay registration fees, you can't pay for food, you can't buy them alcohol, you can't do anything. So we want to avoid a situation where people use money to manipulate the outcome of the conference through favoritism and dispense patronage. The issue of gender equality, you realize when you read the rules, they are very pro-women and pro-youth. And they have been circulated around the country to the branches. And our sessions, being 3 sessions, are meant for conference to also reflect on the gender issue. To say after nominating in the first session, wouldn't conference perhaps nominate women and youth from the floor? And we think that they've got the right to nominate in terms of the ANC Constitution. So that's why our chair is saying that this is not final. At the floor of the conference, we should still be hopeful that that's the case. But what the Constitution of the ANC says is that the total 86 or so members of the NEC should include women, making up 50% of that composition. So in terms of compliance with the ANC Constitution, we think that we should be able to do that when we look at the additional nominees. And in terms of the rules, we are able to make sure that women are given preference if they receive sufficient votes. And I also spoke about the issue of the second DSG. I think we've covered that particular issue. Hutatso from the Sunday Times, I think. He talked about, or if we have disqualified anybody, and if anybody has declined nomination, there's nobody who has declined the nomination, and there's nobody who has thus far been disqualified. But safe to say that the process is still open for disputes and appeals, which might, and objections, which might then lead to a different outcome. But so far, so good in terms of answering that question. Junior Kumalo, News 24, outstanding reports from the Integrity Commission. Did you receive the report? Yes, we are still looking at the reports. We have received them, and the final determination will be made once we are sure that those reports have been accepted by the NEC and have been implemented by the NEC. So that is still a work in progress in that regard. The unfortunate part is that some reports appeared to have only been noted by the NEC. And in that regard, their status become very difficult to enforce. And somewhere where the Integrity Commission could have ruled adversely, such rulings have not been implemented in some cases. But that is what will be taken up within the internal structures of the ANC to ensure that such issues are finalized. I could see that there was some level of not being satisfied with the issue of the leaks. Because what I was trying to explain, and I think the chair will explain it better, is that unlike the provinces, which had branches in good standing and nominated in thousands, the structure that made nomination, in this case, it will be at the level of the national task teams with some provincial delegates of about only 40 people. So in terms of our rules, that kind of nomination amounts to a single nomination. But what you should realize is that even if you are nominated by a province, we have a situation where we consolidate the numbers and then the top three make it to the ballot. That's why you see that some of the comrades in here are there also having been nominated by the leagues. So the final decision is based on who received the highest numbers in order of the top three and sometimes the top two. I thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Matsila. I think Chief Matsila has responded to all the questions, bar one, which relates to ESCOM. Unfortunately, ESCOM is not a branch of the ANC or the leagues. And so Samkela, we will not go in that direction here. Yeah, I know you. It was a long shot in the dark here. Yeah. So I think the only aspect that one may elaborate upon, it's the leagues of the ANC. So you have a situation where the leagues are led by task teams, and so ordinarily they would have had to go through the same process that the ANC structures went through. In other words, they would have had to convene corating branch meetings, for those branch meetings to do two things: the nominations as well as the election of delegates to conference. But given the status of the leagues now, they didn't go through that process. And ordinarily it would have meant that the national position that's consolidated would then be treated or given the same weight as that of a province. So they simply convened extended national meetings of the task teams and did the nomination from that position. So it impacts, whereas it is accepted as a nomination because it has the status of a province, but that's one nomination in the absence of the nominations that would have come from branches and therefore would have added to the tally of votes for that preferred name or nominated name. So in this instance, if you are nominated by the Youth League, yes, your name goes in, but you are minus the votes that would have emanated from branches.
So it's tantamount to a branch. When you say one, you mean a branch?
No, you know how we work here. So we don't work like that. Allow me to do it.
Yeah. No, the point I'm making is that the easy way in which they did the nomination disadvantages their nominees in the sense that they don't have the votes from branches. You get the point here. That's the distinction here. That's the point where I thought it's necessary to elaborate a bit. And then the constitution of the ANC simply states that the election of officials would be separate from that of what it terms the additional members. So that's the 80, because the officials are not a structure in themselves. They are the National Executive Committee in terms of the constitution of the ANC. So they get elected first, not at once. In the past, you would have elected the president first and then came back to announce and then asked for nominations from the floor and then nominated the others sequentially like that. So now, remember the resolutions of conference which gave birth to the electoral committee sought to undermine or eliminate the slate politics, the manipulations, and so on. So the rules are aimed at giving effect to that aim that the Constitution, rather the resolutions sought to address. And that is why the election of officials would be divided into two, so that delegates can see that in terms of the other criteria of demographics, representativity, gender parity and all of that, they can see for themselves that, all they have is an all-male team. And then they can nominate from the floor to try and achieve that balance in the leadership. Now, because the officials are not a structure per se, they are, if you like, the core of the National Executive Committee, and that's how the Constitution defines them. We could not say the 50-50 parity rule would apply to them. But we did say in the rules that the nomination should follow the 50-50% guide. But of course, because it's nominations from different structures and so on, it's not possible to enforce that. But with regards to the nominations of the rest of the NEC, the 50-50 gender parity rule applies. And the rules basically stipulates that if any province, in their 200 nominates 140 males and 60 females, we will only take the 60. We will only consider the top 60 from that 120 or 140 in order to enforce the 50-50 parity rule. And so in the final ballot paper, that would have been factored in. Yeah. So, with regards to the don't do, like you can't sponsor as a nominee, you can sponsor any group of delegates. You can't quarantine them, you can't offer them anything. So the rules are clear that all delegates should use the accommodation provided for by the organization. So in the past, some of the delegates would have been quarantined, so they are kept away from everybody else, from the manner in which they are transported from the province, and where they are accommodated, and throughout conference and so on. So national conference is a structure in terms of the ANC constitution. Once it is convened, it is a structure. So the idea and the spirit of it is that you are there to influence and be influenced by others. So you have to interact with other delegates. Of course, armed by your own mandate from your own branch and so on. Yeah, those are the points that I thought needed a bit of elaboration. Thank you.
No, thanks, Kulua. I did indicate when we started that we're only going to take one round of questions. Let me take this opportunity to thank members of the media. The Electoral Committee will be coming to interface with yourselves on the other 200 names. If you have got a question, I take it that question will still be as valid when they do the second round. So, write them down, Lady Boloke. When we come back, thank you very much. Thanks.